Nico, are you running the camera? Thank you. Okay, Wally, you want to do the singing bowl, please? In the name of the God who created us all, in the name of the Christ who teaches us, in the name of the Spirit who journeys alongside us throughout our lives, welcome home, children of God. Peace be with you. Good morning and welcome to First Presbyterian Church this morning as we gather together as God's people in God's name. It is good to be with you all this morning. I welcome each and every one of you here today. Whether you are joining us here in person or online this morning, thank you for being a part of this worship service. If you are joining us online, would you please take a moment and just sign in on the YouTube chat? Just say good morning and let us know you're here. If you're here, of course, we'll tally up the number of people here and the number of people joining online. And we'll get that total number of people worshiping, and we will do as we do every Sunday, give $1 for every person in worship to a local or international ministry. Today is a fourth Sunday of the month, fourth Sunday of the month, which means that our recipient for Everyone Counts is a ministry called Living Waters for the World. It's not only a great ministry that helps provide clean, solar-powered, clean water filtration systems in communities both around the world and locally. There are some of these water filtration systems installed right here in Carter County, providing clean water to families and communities. But it's also, I like this one in particular because not only is it a great ministry, it's a ministry that we are able to partner with along with Presbyterian churches throughout Alabama, Mississippi, Tennessee, and Kentucky. That's our synod that we're a part of, the Synod of the Living Waters, and churches all across those states, Presbyterian churches, participate together in that ministry. So you are helping to support that and partnering with other churches this morning. Thank you for being a part of that. Let's see, I don't have a lot of other announcements this morning. It is a communion morning, and so you've got a couple of options. I'll break the bread and pour the wine up here, and you are welcome to come up here if you are comfortable doing so. For anyone else, there are little juice and wine cups in the back. They have a little square wafer in them and a little bit of grape juice or wine. We have both, so please make sure you get the one that you want for this morning. Both options are available back there. If you are joining us online, I invite you to take a moment and just find something at home to celebrate with us. Doesn't have to be juice and a cracker, coffee and a donut, whatever you have. The point of this meal is that we feast together as community, and so I invite you to find some way of sharing and joining in that. Are there other joys or concerns or anything to mention this morning? We're doing good with liturgists. Excellent. And thank you to the young Eden men this morning for being our liturgists. Appreciate that. We've got the next few weeks filled up, but there's a sign-up sheet up here. We would love to have as many different voices as possible. I will send you the readings, or Amber will send you the readings for Sunday several days ahead of time, so you got plenty of time to look it over and know what you're reading. It's just a matter of showing up on Sunday morning, coming up here and reading for us. So we'd love to hear from as many different people as possible. There's a sign-up sheet right up here in the front corner on the blue table. Any other joys or concerns? Well, then, beloved community, as we move into worship, we start, as we do each week, with the basic core of our gospel. That God loves us all, without condition and without exception. And that we every one of us, reflects the image of God. God's image is lesbian, gay, bi, trans, queer, straight. God's image is black, brown, white, Asian, indigenous. God's image is male, female, and non-binary. God's image is both rich and poor, able-bodied and disabled, young and old, suffering and rejoicing. We all bear the image of God. And we are all beloved and valued. So welcome, beloved community. We give thanks for this ancestral Cherokee land on which we are gathered, and for the loving waters of the Watauga and the Doe River watersheds that nourish us. As we enter into this time of worship, we pledge ourselves to work for truth and reconciliation among all peoples, and respect for creation in all that we do. So let us worship God.
With nature in its power, and beauty with rain, and wind and sunshine, with the ancient rocks and the budding flowers. We gather in praise of the creative power we call God, with believers and seekers, the whole world wide, with people in every land, and speakers of every language. We gather of the united love that we call God, with plants and animals, distant stars and planets, life-giving waters, and this magnificent planet. We give thanks for the gift of the united life we call God, with Jesus who promised his presence, and the Spirit who showers her blessings. We gather in praise of new knowledge and awareness that we call God. Here let heaven and earth embrace. Here may all people find home.
I invite us to rise in body or in spirit and join together in singing our opening hymn, number 37, Let All Things Now Live.
Good morning. Our meditation today is one that we've done before. It's a meditation to foster compassion and interconnectedness. It's from His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu. So let's all find a comfortable sitting position together. And we'll begin by taking several long breaths through our nose and out through our mouths. Now, think of someone you love very much, a relative or a friend or even a pet. Try to see their face in your mind's eye or feel their presence, and notice how your heart feels when you think of them. Feel whatever arises. If you feel warmth, tenderness, or affection, stay with these feelings. If not, just stay with the thought of your loved one. Silently say the following lines. May you be free from suffering. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you find peace and joy. Breathe in, and as you breathe out, imagine a warm light coming from the center of your heart, carrying your love to your loved one and bringing them peace and joy. Rejoice in the thought of your loved one's happiness. Now remember a time when this person was having a difficult time. Notice what it feels like to experience their pain. Does your heart ache? Do you have a feeling of unease in your stomach or a desire to help? Simply notice the feelings and stay with them. Silently offer the following phrases. May you be free from suffering. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you find peace and joy. Imagine that a warm light emerges from the center of your heart and touches the person you have in mind, easing their suffering. Finish with the heartfelt wish that they be free of suffering. Think of a time now when you experienced a great difficulty and suffering, when you were a child or perhaps even now. Place your hand on your own heart and notice feelings of warmth, tenderness, and caring towards yourself. Reflect on the fact that just like all people, you want to be happy and free of suffering. silently offer the following phrases. May I be free from suffering. May I be healthy. May I be happy. May I find peace and joy. Now imagine someone you neither like nor dislike. Someone you might see frequently at work or the store or the gym, but do not have a strong positive or negative feeling toward. Reflect on the fact that just like all people, this person wants to be happy and free of suffering. Imagine this person being faced with suffering, in conflict with a loved one, or experiencing despair or grief. Allow your heart to feel warmth, tenderness, and caring for this person, and an urge to help them. Now silently offer the following phrases. May you be free from suffering. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you find peace and joy. Reflect on the fact that everyone on the planet has a fundamental desire to be happy and to be free of suffering. Now fill your heart with the desire that all be free of suffering. Perhaps even someone with whom you have a difficult relationship. And silently repeat these phrases. May all beings be free from suffering. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be happy. May all beings find peace and joy. Allow your feelings of compassion and concern to fill your heart, and feel the warmth, tenderness, and caring. Radiate this feeling of compassion out to the world. Amen.
A reading from the book of Psalms, chapter 65, verse 5 through 13. In righteousness you answer us by your awesome deeds, God of our salvation. You, who are the security of all of the far edges of the earth, even the distant seas. You establish the mountains by your strength. You are clothed in awesome power. You calm the roaring seas, calm the roaring waves, calm the noise of the nations. Those who dwell on the far edges stand in awe of your acts. You make the gateways of morning and evening sing for joy. You visit the earth and make it abundant, enriching it greatly by God's stream, full of water. You provide people with grain because that is what you've decided. Drenching the earth's furrows, leveling its ridges, you soften it with rain showers. You bless its growth. You crown the year with your goodness. Your paths overflow with rich food. Even the desert pastures drip with it, and the hills are dressed with pure joy. The meadowlands are covered with flocks, the valleys decked out in grain. They shout for joy, they break out in song.
Thank you, Joan and choir, for that. I love that hymn every time we do it, but I don't know that I've heard that arrangement before. It's beautiful. Thank you all. And, Amber, thank you for that meditation. And where'd Gabe and Elliot? You guys, thank you guys for reading this morning. You guys did a fantastic job. Thank you so much. So in December of 1926, just a little over 95 years ago, physicist Albert Einstein wrote a letter, and he was responding to another fellow physicist named Max Born. And Born and Einstein were writing back and forth. They were debating the foundations of something called quantum mechanics. And that's the physics of the incredibly small, smaller than an atom, but the pieces that make up atoms. And Born had noted that the experimental data that he observed at the time suggested that when we get down to those tiniest, most basic building blocks of the universe, those quantum particles, that we're able to observe that they behaved not always in predictable ways, as we kind of thought that everything in the universe did for 400 years since Isaac Newton, but that they behaved in random and unpredictable ways, as though suffering from arrhythmia. And so Einstein wrote back to Born and responded with a quote that perhaps you've at least heard in some form. Einstein wrote, "I am at all events convinced that God does not play dice with the universe." After roughly 100 years of learning more about quantum mechanics, it seems maybe sometimes God does play dice with the universe. From the time of Isaac Newton, roughly 500 years ago, we get all of these kind of basic models and understandings of how the universe and how our world works. And Newton gave us the math to back it up. So we get these laws of classical mechanics that probably all of us learned sometime around 3rd or 4th grade, even if we've actively worked to forget them since then. Things like, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Or objects in the universe will stay at rest or in motion unless acted upon by an outside force. But even more importantly than those laws of motion, what Newton gave us was a predictable universe. A universe in which we could plug in data and we could make reliable forecasts about the outcome of things. You know, you go up high on a building, you drop a ball off the building, plug in the numbers for the acceleration of gravity and wind resistance, the height of the building, and you can predict and know exactly when that ball will hit the ground. A predictable kind of universe. And all of that work that Newton did provided us not only with kind of insights into how our universe worked, but gave us kind of a set of assumptions that I think carried over into the way that we understand many other things beyond just kind of the physics of, say, falling objects or objects in motion, things like that. That idea that the universe is predictable. That if we have the right data, we can plug it in and know what the outcome will be. The idea that perhaps not just our physical universe, but God, the moral universe, must work the same way. I think that's one of those things we've kind of inherited from Newton's worldview, from Newton's insights that he gave us. So there's a great, she actually writes about management organization systems. Her name is Margaret Wheatley, but she wrote a book on kind of managing businesses and nonprofits and things like that. But she used kind of their insights of quantum physics to draw this distinction that I'm trying to help. So I'm going to borrow her words here for a little bit. And so she identified in this kind of Newtonian universe 4 characteristics. First is that it's a universe based on cause and effect. You know, I push the button on my coffee maker in the morning and the coffee maker gets power, heats up, brews my coffee. The coffee that I drank this morning was the result of actions that caused it to happen, right? Cause and effect. It's a universe of determinism, and predictability. I can predict that when I flip the switch on my coffee maker, I know the thing that's going to happen next. Burner heats up, water flows through the coffee basket, I get coffee. Here's a big one. It's a universe comprised of separate and discrete parts. That coffee maker, and yes, I'm a little fixated on coffee this morning, obviously. That coffee maker is an entity that is separate from me, just as I am separate from each person in here. That everything in our universe kind of has these clear, defined boundaries. I know where I end and where you begin, or the coffee maker begins, or whatever. If you grew up with a sibling, the example I thought of, if you grew up with a sibling as I did, you may have experienced this when you or your sibling, would hold your finger this far from your brother or sister's face. Say, I'm not touching you, right? Because you're not touching them, you're this far away, but there's that discrete barrier, boundary between where you end and where they begin. And finally, the other big one I think that we are continuing to struggle with in our postmodern age is the idea that we live in a universe of objective reality. That data, whatever it is, that data is measurable and recordable, and that when that data is collected accurately, it is presumed to be both objective and reliable. That is, that a neutral observer should be able to repeat the experiment that we did and collect the exact same data because the event, whatever we're observing, exists independent of whoever's observing it. And so, if that's the case, then everybody should be able to observe the same things. That's actually kind of what makes up the foundations of the scientific method we talked about at the beginning of this month, on our first Sunday of our Science and Faith Month. And all these presumptions or presuppositions of the universe were virtually unassailable for 400 years after Isaac Newton. And then comes quantum mechanics. And despite Einstein's letter kind of challenging Max Born's findings, Einstein's theories about quantum mechanics have contributed a great deal to how we now know and understand the universe at its most basic level. Before Einstein came along, in Newton's understanding, the basic stuff of the universe was matter. It was the stuff that makes up everything. That's that discrete and independent things that we're talking about. The coffee maker is made up of matter that's discrete and independent from me. Einstein came along and discovered that the basic building block of the universe is not matter, but energy. And that energy is capable of being modified and transformed. Now, I know I can see some eyes glazing over. I'm sorry. I promise I'm trying to get to a point using a science thing that is fascinating to me and probably bores 95% of the rest of you. But if you'll bear with me, this is kind of a fundamental shift in the way we understand everything around us. And so as energy is capable of being modified and transformed, that insight that our universe isn't made up the way we think it is, that caused some of the other assumptions about the way our universe works to start to crumble. So in this new understanding, things are not discrete like we once thought they were. They can only be understood in relation to one another. And that's Einstein's famous relativity. If you jump on a plane and you fly across the ocean, while you're in flight, you will age slower than somebody who's stuck on the ground relative to that person. If you jump on a spaceship and you travel around the universe at near the speed of light, you'll get back And you've aged a few years while centuries have passed on the earth. And it isn't that time functions differently if you're on that spaceship traveling faster or that airplane. It's that time functions the same, but you age differently relative to the person on the earth who's traveling at the speed of the earth. You're traveling at that speed plus more. And so time functions the same, but we can only measure it in relation to something else. So in other words, everything we observe about our universe can only be measured in relation to something else. And this is the other big insight of quantum mechanics, is that we cannot observe something in our universe without our observation changing that thing. That's that other famous, the Schrodinger Cat Experiment, right? You've got a cat in a box that can be either alive or dead, but as soon as you observe it, you've caused something to happen. You've caused a change in reality by making that observation. One of the ways we've been demonstrating this for 200 years is by shining a light through a piece of paper with two slits in it. And when you look at what shows up on the wall behind those two slits, you see that light functions like a wave. And so you get these interference patterns where the light hits going through the two slits, hits the paper behind it, and you see the interference that you would expect from waves. But as soon as you stop and observe the light going through the slit, the light stops functioning as a wave and starts functioning as a particle. That's that wave-particle duality of photons. And again, I know I'm glazing eyes over, but I want to make the point that when we observe something, we are changing it. And we can only observe a thing and measure it in relation to that. So I hope I'm at least drawing that out as a clear enough distinction between the way we understood things to be objective and discrete and what we now know about how our universe works. They are not objective and discrete, but that we can only measure in relation to something else, and that in measuring and observing it, we change it. That very act of observing something changes it. And what that means is that reality is not this objective thing that we can just observe, but a thing rather that is more fluid and that we are all taking part in creating. So what does that mean? It means that at its most basic, our universe and everything in it does not exist apart from us. It doesn't exist as this objective thing out there that is the same whether we're in it or not, but it exists only in relation to everything in it. And that's kind of the world-changing insight of quantum mechanics, that everything in our universe exists not independently and discretely, but in relation to something else. That idea of independence apart from anything else is a myth. And maybe a way to think about that at a more macro level is to just consider you, your personality, your interests, your quirks, everything that makes you you. All of that stuff exists only because you are in relationship with other people around you. If there were nobody else, you wouldn't be different, because there's nothing that you're relating to make that comparison. We all are who we are because we are in relationship to other things around us. And in fact, even our personalities and expressions often look different as we relate to different people. And it doesn't mean that we are different people, it just means that some of our personality traits are evoked and others are suppressed, depending on who we're dealing with in a particular moment. That doesn't make us inauthentic, it makes us quantum. Not only are we fuzzy in that sense, the whole universe is. And this whole month, we've been invited to consider how science can give us deeper insights into the life of faith. And I shared all of that stuff about quantum physics, even though I know it's putting, again, 95% of you to sleep, because that was the stuff that, to me, reading and trying to make sense of that is the stuff that, to me, led to the greatest transformation in my own understanding of God. In this Newtonian universe, the kind of religion or faith that I grew up in and had for most of my life, I thought of God as infinitely predictable and rational. Everything God did was predictable. I might not have had all the data to make the predictions, but God functioned in my worldview as kind of this cause and effect God. That's the presumption we tackled 2 weeks ago when we looked at the story of Job. Job's friends thought that Job's suffering was related to something Job did. Job did something that was the cause. God punished Job. That was the effect. That's the predictable universe, the predictable understanding of God. And so Job didn't suffer because God acted irrationally. It's just that when Job suffered, or when we suffer, or when things happen, it's not God acting irrationally. It's simply that we are missing some critical bit of understanding in the mind of God. We don't have all the data to plug in to get to the right conclusions. But if we had enough data, we could ultimately predict God, and if not become God. One of the real oddities of quantum physics is that those basic particles can take on different forms. Those photons in that double slit experiment can be both particles and waves, depending on an observer. That was an insight to me in theological terms, that it began to give me some freedom to think of God not as some immutable being, but rather as this force able to take on different forms in relation to the ones encountering and experiencing God. So maybe sometimes God acts as a wave, discoverable only as a thought or a feeling. Maybe sometimes God functions as a particle or a collection of particles, a carpenter from Israel, a blue-faced goat herder from India, a spot of light in your meditation this morning. The Native Americans believed that God was a shapeshifter, capable of becoming a coyote or a jackal or the smoke from a fire. And those were all things that were familiar to them, all things that they could understand. And so God could even become, if that's what you are looking for, a big guy in the sky. And of course, this is all metaphor. As I learn about the fascinating science of quantum mechanics, it has functioned as a metaphor for me to deepen my understanding of God. And that's the frontier where I now find my faith stretched to new insights. But the greatest revelation of all that to me is that my quest to know God comes not through acquiring knowledge, like in that Newtonian universe, trying to get the data that I need for a better understanding, but in the deepening realization that God can only ever be known in the same way that we can only ever know anything about our universe, and that is in relationship. That God can only ever be known in the same way anything in our universe can only ever be known in relationship. And so we wrap up our Science and Faith Month this morning, and again, Julie, I just want to say a deep thank you to you and to everybody who kind of helped bring this tradition to this church. I don't know when it started. I know you have been the banner carrier of that since I've been here, but this has just been such a wonderful celebration for me this month. And so I'm grateful for you all for indulging both my explorations of science and my very small modicum of understanding of the things I'm trying to talk about up here. But these things have shaped my own understanding of my faith. And in particular this morning, what I am celebrating is that the greatest insight that science has offered me is that faith deepens not in the acquisition of knowledge, but in relationship to everything around. Relationship with God, with the universe, with the world around me, with every person in here. And in fact, not only that, but that God exists, not independent of the universe and everything in it, but that God is in fact that very interconnectedness and relatedness that binds all things together. So, if you have tuned me out for all of the quantum physics this morning, you can wake back up now. The takeaway is that God is relationship. Again, thank you for indulging me in my exploration of that this morning. But we can celebrate that in knowing that when we are in a relationship with each other and with the universe around us, we are indeed experiencing God. So, amen and blessed be. We move now to that time of response as we have a chance to share of our own gifts and talents and things that we have accumulated and share a little bit so that we can try to help build relationships with others through our gifts. Let's receive our tithes and offerings. seated. Always try to think about a way to talk about this meal in relation to what we're doing in church. And of course, I am convinced that Jesus understood the message of what we were trying to talk about this morning in a deep, deep way. That we exist and experience God only in relationship. Because if you look at Jesus' ministry, one of the things he did most often, more often than really anything else, is to gather with people and eat and break bread. He didn't do it in a synagogue or in a church setting. There wasn't something special about being in the right place, using the right elements of bread and wine. He just feasted with other people. He understood that being in relationship with other people and breaking bread together is the way we experience God. And that's all this is. There's nothing special about the fact that we're using bread or wine or wafers or coffee or donuts or whatever you have at home. What we are eating and drinking doesn't matter. What matters is that we are eating together, that we are in relationship with one another, feasting together at this table, even if it's only a symbolic way right now. But this is what Jesus does. This is how he practices his ministry. He comes together with people, all kinds of people across all walks of life, including a lot of people that Jesus himself may not have liked. And Amber, thank you for that meditation reminding us that we all, at our basic level, want the same thing: to be loved, to be without suffering. And so Jesus gathered people together, and he broke bread, and he shared it, and people ate together. And in doing that, people experienced God. So, beloved siblings in Christ, I invite us to do the same this morning. Whether you're at home joining or here, there are little cups with a wafer and juice or wine in them back there if you'd like. We have wine and bread up here if you're comfortable coming forward to partake. But let's take a moment and at least symbolically feast together. We would celebrate communion every Friday in chapel, and whenever she presided over the table, would always say, because we would do it the same way and come up and tear off some bread and dip it in the wine, and she would always say, take a piece of bread as big as you imagine God's love to be. Because we would always, everybody come up and try to take the tiniest little piece you can to leave enough, and there's always leftover, so remind us to take as big as we imagine God's love to be. So did everybody have a chance to celebrate in some way? Okay. Then I'm going to invite us to stand or rise in body or spirit and sing our closing hymn. I think we've done this one before. I can't remember. It's a Jamaican folk melody. It's kind of a lively dance. Let us talents and tongues employ, and it's also meant to be a communion hymn to celebrate feasting together and then send us out. So let's rise in body or spirit and sing and dance together if you'd like. Get it there. As we go out today, beloved siblings in Christ, the charge is this. We experience God only through relationship. Maybe relationship to other people, maybe relationship to the rocks and trees and skies and seas and mountains and everything around us. But we are always in relationship, and that's how we experience God. So go out this week and find a way to broaden that experience. Maybe it's a hike and experiencing another part of creation. Maybe it's befriending or conversing with somebody you don't normally want to do. But find a way to broaden that experience of God as we are in relationship to all things around us. As you go forth from this day, go forth from here this day. May the road rise up to meet you. May the wind blow always at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face. May the rains fall soft upon your fields, and until we meet again, may God hold you in the hollow of her hand. Amen.
Quintet.